Medal of Honor has an odd history with their portable entries. They first attempted to port Medal of Honor Underground to the Game Boy Advance. This resulted in a lackluster experience of a bad port to a great game. What followed this was a unique title that was built from the ground up for the GBA. Medal of Honor Infiltrator used the limited buttons on the Game Boy Advance to make a game specifically designed for that handheld. This resulted in a game that became a bit of a forgotten gem. It turned out to be a quality title that deserved more attention and is one of the lesser known Medal of Honor games. With the introduction of Sony's PSP, EA was interested in offering a Medal of Honor experience to the portable audience. This resulted in 2 games being made for that platform. Join me as we take a look back at Medal of Honor Heroes 1 and 2. With the PSP being the new handheld on the market, EA was interested in adapting its Medal of Honor franchise for that platform. In many ways, the PSP was a more powerful handheld and could offer a console-like experience in a portable setting, along with allowing for multiplayer options. EA wanted to build a new entry from the ground up for the PSP that is rooted in the Medal of Honor universe, along with staying true to the authenticity of the franchise. With this being a brand new handheld, the team had to build a lot of their systems from the ground up for this entry. This meant that they created a brand new AI system, level designs that would work specific to the platform, along with control customization. EA spent a lot of their time during development to work within the limitations of the PSP to create multiple options for controls for the player. What made it hard to adapt first-person shooters on the PSP was how the PSP only had one analog nub. This meant that developers needed to get creative to find intuitive controls for their game. To ensure that developers could offer the best control options, they had the game go through extensive focus tests and play testing to find the best controls. Heroes would contain a campaign that would see players returning to the roles of different heroes from prior Medal of Honor games. The stories would take a traditional approach by providing the player with briefings. A skirmish mode would be included that would allow for additional offline options. And on top of all of this, Heroes would offer a 32-person multiplayer and take advantage of the PSP's online play. Medal of Honor Heroes was shaping up to be a solid title for the PSP. In October 2006, Medal of Honor Heroes was released to the world. Medal of Honor Heroes is a PSP first-person shooter. For the most part, the action is pretty enjoyable and does a good job at capturing the traditional Medal of Honor gameplay on a handheld. Instead of going in the direction of Infiltrator, this game tries to mimic the style of the console counterparts, and it succeeds in many ways. The game does have its fair share of flaws, but the biggest issue is how the developers really needed to find a way to make a game work like this with the restrictions of only having one joystick. The campaign is a short and sweet experience, and overall a pretty good game. When it comes to controls, you can perform all of the expected actions like a crouch, jump, and even aiming down your sights for more precision. Some buttons double as 2 actions, like the aiming down your sights button is also used for a melee attack. Heroes provides a few different options to toy around with for how you want to aim in the game. I stuck with the default options where I use the face buttons to control my aiming. We will get into this more a bit later, but the aiming is functional but not the best, and I blame this more on the restrictions of the handheld itself. You can adjust the sensitivity to your button presses to find a control set that works best for you, but expect some clunky execution. The missions have a nice variety from winter locations, fighting in storms, city locations, beaches, and an airfield. Allied AI will follow you around to help you out, but you cannot control them. When it comes to the actual shooting, it's pretty good considering the platform it's on. The sound effects range from decent to good, and the death animations are okay as well. It is important to note that the AI is rather dumb in this game and does not have the same behavior of the console games. Control issues aside, I did enjoy the shooting. What I really liked about the game was how many of the levels will allow you to complete objectives in any order you want. You are thrown into an environment and the map will indicate what direction your objectives are in, and then you pick one and get started. In this way, there is a bit of freedom in how you tackle the levels. Do not expect an expansive amount of choice in these levels, though there is some level of choice and it is appreciated. I wasn't expecting this. I thought the developers would push to go in a more linear direction. This design allows for some variability and slightly changing each player's experience. You see this within the first level as you have an entire airfield to explore, and you can sometimes even find additional weapons to use. The second level features a similar design but in a village, and you can opt to either use the roads or bob and weave throughout the different buildings. These missions have similar objectives like the console games, like blowing up big structures and stealing intel. Then there are other missions which focus on you holding 1 or 2 points, and the game acts like a round of domination. These all play the same and are less interesting than the more open missions. When it comes to the story, it takes a familiar approach with briefings and war footage. You assume the roles of different characters from the series. Nothing new is done here from a story standpoint, but the war footage is appreciated. It is familiar and an enjoyable approach.
I'll get right to the point. As you know, the OSS was formed 2 years ago by presidential order to serve as the intelligence branch of the United States military. Our job is anything and everything. Espionage, sabotage, subversion, search and rescue, you name it, we do it. I've been asked by the director to brief you on some of our main field operatives, whose actions you will heretofore be overseeing. This is the file for Sergeant John Baker. He's a recent OSS recruit, currently serving in Italy as part of Operation Avalanche.
In addition to the main campaign is a skirmish mode. Here you will face off against bots, but you only have access to one mode. Deathmatch is the only one that is featured, but you do get a variety of maps. This mode is pretty fun, but also lacking. For one, it does not have much in the way of customization. I wished you could play the other modes besides Deathmatch. It is a nice inclusion, but it feels half-baked. Also, the respawn counter is 10 seconds, which is way too long for a Deathmatch mode. Heroes is a pretty fun game, but it does have its own set of flaws. My biggest issue with the game is how the controls work. I give the developers a lot of credit for providing different controls for the player to play around with. The biggest issue with the controls is how the game wants to be a console first-person shooter, but the developers need to figure out how to deliver something like that with only one joystick. On the PSP, they were stuck with using one joystick, and in many cases using the face buttons to aim. This is a functional control system, but not the preferred way to play an FPS. There is a silver lining. You can play this with 2 sticks on the Vita, and this vastly improves the experience. In short, the developers did their best with what they could do while making it fun on the PSP, though I would recommend that you play it on the Vita for the added control. Outside of the controls, I had some other issues. There are way too many campaign missions that are capture and hold missions. These all play the same and are kind of boring at times since enemies don't respawn much. I also felt like it was a missed opportunity to not have a horde mode of some kind in this game. There is more good than bad here, and it should be commended how fun this is considering the limitations. It can be a bit clunky to control, but I always found it pretty fun.
So now it's up to you, Lieutenant. Failure is not an option. Under no circumstances can the Germans find out that you're with the OSS. You're going in with the 5th Rangers. Their mission is to land on the beach and liberate the city. We have our own objectives. Your first task is to get off the beach and into the fortified guardhouse. I'll brief you more when you get there.
The controls are mostly the same. The same goes for the weapons that you will use, along with the gun sounds and enemy reactions. The graphics do look a bit better than the last entry. You do not use medkits anymore to heal yourself. Instead, Heroes 2 operates on a health regeneration system. The biggest difference with the campaign is how Heroes 2 has more of a curated and linear story, as opposed to the open mission design in the prior game. The downside is that the exploration is gone, as the game rushes you to the next objective, but now the campaign does feel like something that you would find on a home console. I am a bit mixed about this. I do miss the more open missions from the first one, as the light exploration was enjoyable. At the same time, the linear levels in 2 are very enjoyable as well. It is also too bad that they never made a third game, as I would have loved to see a combination of mixing up the open and linear levels into one game. When it comes to the campaign, my main issue is how you feel like you are continually swarmed at times because of so many respawning enemies. The story is decent, with short and sweet cutscenes. An auto mission is how there is no form of a skirmish mode within the second entry, so there is no way to play any of the multiplayer with bots. Overall, Heroes 2 has a fun, short and sweet campaign, but in other areas it feels like the content was removed for no reason, with nothing replacing it. I think the sequel could have done more to provide more skirmish modes for the player than in 1. If I had to compare the two, I think Heroes 1 is a bit better than Heroes 2. Considering what the developers had to work with on the PSP, they did a pretty good job at creating solid shooters for this handheld. Both Medal of Honor Heroes 1 and 2 are pretty good handheld first-person shooters on the PSP. I give the developers a lot of credit in finding pretty good control schemes that work despite the PSP's lack of a second analog stick. The games do have their fair share of flaws, but the biggest one is the controls. Thankfully, you can play both entries on the Vita and remap the controls to allow for a smoother experience with dual analog sticks. The action is pretty good within both games. The first Heroes offers a campaign more in the way of exploration, along with a fun but limited skirmish mode. Heroes 2 has a campaign that is way more linear, but it feels more curated and a bit more on par with a console counterpart. Both of these games were an interesting experiment for the handheld and pretty fun entries. I do wish that EA decided to make a third game on the Vita which had a better set of controls to make for a potentially smoother experience, but sadly the Heroes sub-series ended with the second one. If you own a PSP or Vita, both of these games are pretty fun entries. Thank you very much for watching.